So if you think of the internal booking,
Yes.
if you think of the booking process, when a clinic says, okay, our process is so complicated, there's no way that there is a booking tool that can reflect that complicated process. Me personally, I disagree with that statement, because we have even referral centers using the online booking tool. So specialized appointments are being booked online. So being able to reflect the workflow of a regular practice, I think that we're actually doing a really good job doing that. But I'll leave it to you to explain that one, because I know you're better in explaining than I am.
So yeah, one of the talking points from our clients is that they have complex internal booking procedures, and how can Vetstoria mirror or imitate that online? And what's really important for us at Vetstoria, and I think you'll agree, Ida, is that the emphasis for the clinic to be in control, and to have that sense of control as well. We don't want to hinder any processes and make things more difficult. We know clinic life is at times very stressful anyway. And the way that we can mirror their procedures, when we talk to clinics, hospitals across the globe, in Australia, in America, UK, Europe, naturally they're all going to have different requirements. And this ranges from your first opinion to your referral centres, and then your sort of complex hospitals that are a mixture of both. And so we make sure that we have in-depth conversations, good attention to detail, and we make sure that things like emergency slots are catered for, that perhaps they block out internally, or if they don't do vaccines on a Monday morning or a Friday afternoon, that again, we mirror exactly the same at Vetstoria. And we even have clinics staggering appointments, like one sick, one routine, to make sure that it's manageable internally. And that's exactly what we can do at Vetstoria. So I think clinics are always very pleasantly surprised how much they remain in control, and how it mirrors their current setup. Do you agree, Ida?
I agree. For example, so let's say we're setting up a clinic, right? And they tell me, oh, I'm not sure I want to go live with the tool, because what if we open it up for the public and then my schedule is being filled up with appointment types, right? It's a big fear, and I do understand. However, if we go to the back end of Vetstoria, we open it up and we show them, okay, let's take vaccination as an example, very popular example, most popular appointment type that is booked. But the enemy, it feels like, of every practice manager or receptionist, because it's the one appointment type that is filling up the slots, right? And then you see 20 vaccinations a day, not giving you enough time to focus on emergency appointments. You can gain full control through Vetstoria. We can say, let's maximize the appointment count per day. So if you tell us, for example, I want to put a max, like a lid on top for vaccinations, we can do that. We can say 5 a day, no problem. We put a blocker at 5. As soon as Vetstoria reaches the count of 5, it will go the next day and the next day, making sure there is an equal distribution of those appointment types. And you can play around with the system. You can say vaccinations, maybe I want to, put the stop on after 5, consultation or examinations, I want to have a different number there. So you're really, rather than saying, okay, I'm opening up everything and I'm afraid what's going to happen, you kind of gain control, because you know exactly what, let's say, worst case scenario, what could happen. Worst case scenario is that you get, let's say, 5 or 10, depends on the number you've chosen, appointments of that specific appointment type. And so that gives you a kind of calmness. I would say when you show this one to the practice managers or the receptionists, whoever's the one who's setting up the tool with us, when they see this option, I would say it eases their mind, and they're like, okay, let's do that. We can work with that.
Absolutely. And I think Sort of just touching on the calmness and the control, we see this because once you've set up Vetstoria, most of the time it's self-serving and you don't need to log in and change anything unless something changes internally that perhaps you then want to, of course, adapt to. So most of our clinics and hospitals we know set it up, they let it do its thing, and they're confident and calm that there's not going to be any issues there and it's going to work in exactly the way they want it. So yes, I agree with what you said as well, Ida.
Maybe another point, and this is because we set up, I don't remember when, I think at the end of last year, we set up this huge referral center in Berlin, right? So this is, it's another challenge. And if you think about it, this really, it gets everything out of the tool. So what you can do is, certain vets are specialized on very specific treatments, and we can cater for that, right? We can make sure that very specific appointment types are booked into the right column. Into the right column, I mean, they're seen by the right vet. So this is the first step. You're making sure nothing will happen. If, let's say, Dr. Happy is only looking at consultation, nothing else, we can set it up this way, making sure that vaccinations go to his colleague and not are entering the column of Dr. Happy. That's one example. Another one is, I didn't know that, but you told me about this, Vicky, that actually vets with time they develop allergies.
Yes.
So a big one is, and that's the example I use. Let's say someone developed an allergy for rabbits. If I'm not mistaken, you are the one who's allergic to rabbits.
I'm allergic to everything.
So let's take the example of rabbits, right? You're allergic to rabbits. You wouldn't want, if you're a receptionist on the phone, you wouldn't want to schedule that rabbit into the column of Vicky, for example, who's allergic to rabbits. But you want to make sure that this appointment type goes into another column, and we can make sure that this happens. There's so many different settings of how to cater for this in Vetstoria that there's no problem to do so.
And I think you're touching on as well the back end and how highly customizable it is. And one bit of feedback I never get bored of hearing is usually the clinics, the hospitals, the lovely champions that we talk to, they may get a little bit of an insight, in the initial stages of onboarding. But when we really sort of dig deep, they say, I just cannot believe how many settings there are and how much I can change and how much I can customize. And I never get bored of hearing that. And it's just so positive. And we know, and there's so many settings, but if we touch on a few of them, you mentioned about sort of excluding species from calendars if they're allergic, for example, and equally in another scenario, if you have an exotic specialist and they're the only ones that have seen all your lovely reptiles and amphibians, etc., we can cater for that scenario so they're not booked in with an individual who's perhaps a little bit more nervous. And ultimately, the clinics will get to choose which calendars are available for online booking. So I think sometimes there's a bit of nerves that we're going to allow a now clip in their ops diary, which would be catastrophic, but we don't. It's simply what you want, whether it's the vet calendars, the nurses, or perhaps a meeting with a behaviour specialist, and that goes into a dedicated column. There's a lot you can do there, isn't there?
Agree.
And equally, other customizations that are extremely popular are, of course, the appointment types that you mentioned earlier. We know that if you're first opinion, if you're referral, it could be sort of your standard list of vaccines, which we know are highly popular, your different types of consultations as well, and nurse appointments. But ultimately, the clinic gets to decide the duration of them as well. And you touched on it earlier, Ida, the maximum appointment count. So being able to limit how many of those types of bookings are taking place each day. And this has been hugely popular, especially not just managing vaccines, which are the most popular one, but also new clients. So being able to say, well, actually, we only want to take on so many new clients per day, and being able to remain in control of that.
100%. Another one, and you mentioned it before, is I love it. Slot exclusions. So coming up with those rules is, for example, Monday morning. And Julian told me that, right? You come into practice, and he said it's the worst that you can have. Monday morning is just the worst. You enter practice, the weekend just happened. So much happened with the pets. There's so many emergencies coming in. So what you wouldn't want is that your calendar actually filled up on a Monday morning. You want to make sure that this one remains available for those emergencies, to be able to cope with what happened over the weekend. So I think slot exclusion is a great feature that we have. It allows the practice basically to create time frames of when they would like to allow certain appointments to be booked. Example, you don't want to have any vaccinations on Monday morning, not a problem. You set it up. So me as a pet owner, I try to book, let's say, a consultation for my injured pet on a Monday morning. No problem, I can, because it's available. However, if I would try to book a vaccination, it would redirect me maybe to Monday, late afternoon or Tuesday. Really depends on the setting. So I think slot exclusion is a fantastic feature that allows them
Brilliant.
to customize even further those time frames for every single appointment type, if they need it, if they want it. They don't have to, but it allows them to create those. Again, as you mentioned before, gaining control rather than just waiting to see what happens if they allow all those bookings.
Absolutely. Yeah, and we see slot exclusions, as you mentioned, in use for vaccines. And there is veterinary professionals are quite superstitious. You never say on a Friday that it's quiet. It is against the law in veterinary clinics to say this, because as soon as you do, you're going to have maybe 3 cesareans, a couple of what we call pyometras in clinic, maybe a car accident, and it can become hell on earth. So Fridays are very precious in clinic life, and the afternoon you typically see these emergencies coming in, just before the weekend as well. And a lot of clinics like to perhaps put a bit of a limit, as you mentioned, on vaccines, etc., and really deal with those that need attention and a bit of a thorough workup if they're sick or injured. And equally, euthanasia appointments, or quality of life assessments, should we say, we want the client to have as much dignity with their pet as possible. And it's very difficult if you've got a waiting room full of people. It's a very sensitive and a very emotional time. So a lot of clinics will like to allocate, say, the hour before lunch, or at the very end of the day when it's typically quieter. So not only can the staff dedicate their time and be present, but the client feels a bit safer. There's not, lots of hustle and bustle and loads of people in the waiting room staring at you, and as you're emotional with your pet. So slot exclusions are fantastic in that scenario as well, and being able to accommodate those clients in those situations.
Agree. I had one example, a clinic who set up a quality of life as an appointment type, and they decided to offer this one as the very last appointment of the day, to make sure that, as you said, the pet owner enters the right scenario, right? The practice is a little bit calmer. But what they've done is they added it with a slot exclusion. So this appointment only is bookable at the end of the day, but they also included payments for it. So,
Yep.
and I thought that this was actually very thoughtful, something I luckily never had to think about. But obviously, after such an appointment, the worst thing that can happen, the appointment is done, you have to go to the reception, actually pay for it. What Vetstoria allows you, it creates the right time slot to book these kind of appointment types, but you pay for it in advance. So when this appointment is over, you can leave without having the politeness of interacting with people any further. So yes, there's way of customizing the tool, which I think it reflects so many scenarios if you allow it to.
Absolutely. And yes, we want it to be there for convenience, of course, and to help staff, but also help the clients, importantly as well. And hit the nail on the head, those sensitive moments. I've been in that position where I've had to ask payment from a client that's in utter distress, and It's not pleasant for them. It's not pleasant for me to do that. And so being able to sort of just take away that step so they can exit, you know, in a manner that is a bit more calming. They haven't got to think about anything else. They can just leave and process what's just happened. I think is very important. So yeah, I agree. And other customizations that we have is obviously what I think is very important, and I do more and more with clinics, is changing the wording throughout the booking process. There's lots of messages. Obviously, we talked across the globe to countries, so we all have different ways of saying things. For example, pocket pet was the first time I heard that in the US, and we say small mammal. It's just slight changes that we have, but it's important because it means that the clinics can, really put their stamp on it. You know, how they talk to their clients, what wording they typically use, and add different messages or even disclaimers that we have to give the client more instructions. And I think that's become extremely popular over the last couple of years.
Agree. So because you mentioned it, content pages, right? The disclaimers, something which some clinics say, oh, it's nice to have, but maybe not that important. Until at the end of last year, for example, we had the vaccination shortage in Europe, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what some practices said, okay, we cannot offer any vaccination online, but then they contacted us and they said, we took off the vaccination from online booking and now the phone is ringing like crazy. We need an alternative solution. So what we were able to do, and I remember we worked together on this, Vicky, what we were able to do is we said, okay, first of all, let's separate because it's not affecting all species. It's only affecting cats, right? So we separated it. We set up a very specific vaccination for cats. The other
Mm-hmm.
ones, they could be booked online without any interruption. The one for cats, additionally, we pushed them back in the hope 8 weeks duration. I would say we pushed them back. The shortage will be over in 8 weeks. But what we additionally did, not just adding this pushback and then the pet owner sees online an appointment that is available with a delay of 8 weeks, what I thought was key is adding this content page, explaining a pet owner why they're seeing a delayed availability to what they would have expected, but also providing the comfort of reassuring them your pet will still be protected, even though you're crossing the overdue period. We are sure that your pet is going to be protected. Please respect the time slots that we offer and book something that is, pushed back by 8 weeks. And I thought this was the game changer because practices were like, oh, I didn't think about it. And I told them, look, if I wouldn't work in this industry and I'm a pet owner myself, how would I know that there is a shortage?
Exactly.
How would I know that I have now to respect a delay of 8 weeks? Also, me, I would book the practice and say, hey, there's something going on. Can you please give me an appointment that is earlier?
Mm-hmm.
But if I read a message that gives me the comfort of there is the shortage, your animal is, however, remaining protected, please book with a delay of 8 weeks. I will, because I'm informed and I'm taking a decision that is informed. And this is a way where I think we also understood communication is key. Whenever you change the online booking tool, maybe in a way that feels like a disadvantage to a pet owner because you're limiting availability, let the pet owners know why. And we have those content pages that can be conditioned to certain appointment types. So if anyone wants to provide further information at different steps of the booking process, I think content pages are the solution to it.
Yep, I absolutely love them. And as you mentioned, the fact that you can have a content page that's universal, so it applies to perhaps everybody, if it's COVID-19 instructions, for example, or vaccine specific, or something else that the client wants pet owners to know. We had one recently in the US where it's very popular. If you're booking in a vaccination with a nurse, you must have been seen with the doctor in the last 6 months, and they must have had a health check. And for me, it's the same instructions and the same information you would say on the phone to your clients that we're taking onto the booking tool and making sure they get the same consistent information. And what I love, of course, is that they have to tick the box to say they've read and understood it before they book online with you. So you know they're absorbing that information and not just skipping a step. So yeah, very, very popular, I think, as well. And I think one other very popular customization is appointment screening, which I think every practice manager in the land absolutely adores. And the reason being is because one question I think I get every onboarding call is, can surgeries book online? What if it's an emergency? And appointment screening is such a fantastic feature, because as we know, you can set up keywords as a clinic that will be flagged during the booking process. So if clients were to use surgical terms like op, dental, lump removal, and of course emergency words, bloat, straining, collapsed, they're going to be flagged, and a message will pop up for the owner to say, please stop what you're doing, give the clinic a call instead. I just think this is a fantastic feature that can be used, and to also give the clinics that sort of assurance that, again, they're getting the appropriate information. And we know there's also another filter under the appointment screening, that if a client has a pet with a urinary issue, say they describe it as having cystitis, we can flag that word and ask them to bring in a urine sample, and which again I know clinicians love, because typically we have to wait 20 minutes for them to walk around the car park to get us a urine sample, whereas if they've got it, if they're prepared and ready, it's fantastic for the clinic and for the pet owner.
100%. So speaking of, I don't know, maybe the integration part, right?
Yes.
Because I have in my head, let's go through the back end. How is it set up? A very important part that we see is integration.
Yes.
So Vetstoria, usually the main driver when we integrate Vetstoria is the website. So there is this very popular book an appointment button on the website, and this is no doubt the number one driver for appointments. However, there's so many other ways of utilizing Vetstoria to allow pet owners to book from different sources. Example is utilizing Facebook, Instagram, Google My Business, or any other social media platform that someone can think of. And probably the most powerful one is the reminder links. So we can take different reminder provider, iRecall, Pet Desk, whoever you want. And those usually send out text messages or emails that remind the pet owners to book an appointment because their pet is overdue or due on a certain date. The classic way was, okay, I receive a reminder, I pick up the phone and I call the practice, right, to book an appointment. With Vetstoria, however, the message becomes actionable. So I receive the message and it tells me, please click here to book your appointment. And in some integrations, it's as powerful because we work with smart links. Once I click on that link, it will even be pre-filled. So I think what happens here is a win-win situation. Me as a pet owner, obviously I'm happy when I get the reminder, and at 10 o'clock in the evening, I'm comfortable on my couch. I can click that link and I'm done booking an appointment. However, it's a huge win for the practice as well, because their phone lines are reduced. The push outs, the text messages that they send to remind their pet owners of the upcoming appointments are not resulting in an increased phone volume, but it's actually appointments coming in real time into the practice management system. So I think integration and having a complete integration of how to utilize Vetstoria on different sources, different platforms, I think is very important as well.
Absolutely. And I love the fact that it is accessible on different platforms. So if a pet owner is typically more on Facebook, I'm going to have a confession here. I very rarely go on my veterinary clinic's website. It's really awful, but I don't. I'm on social media probably more, and but it means that I can still book via their page if I don't typically go on the website, which is great. And as you mentioned, for new clients or people searching in the area on Google, again, they can book from there, which is fantastic. So I love that. And on a separate note, you know, and I know that you've got brilliant knowledge about this, Ida, with regards to the analytics, is being able to have the insight as to where the pet owners are engaging from, and what is your most popular platform, and where can we, you know, maybe channel some energy or change something. You know, on Instagram, I think it's underused, but it's fantastic for videos and showing online booking. And we recently saw a clinic do this, and it was fantastic, and they got huge engagement from it. I know it takes a bit of adapting for us in the the older people, for me anyway, to get used to. I don't think we've seen TikTok yet, but I'm sure it will come. I'm sure that's going to be added sooner, probably that rather than later. But being accessible, I think, is key to the pet owner, and being able to find you and book with you with ease, as you mentioned. And reminders are seamless. I absolutely love them, and it's just taking out so many phone calls to their reception.
Agree. Now that you mentioned it, phone calls, right? When we ask practices, what is your number one goal when installing an online booking tool?
Yes.
The answer is, I want to reduce the phone volume, because they're loaded with the phones, right? It's ringing
Yep.
all day. And I do understand some of those appointments, they're better off taken via phone. 100% agree. There's no discussion about that. But others, like vaccination, etc., they don't have to go through the phone. And by utilizing Vetstoria, the full potential of Vetstoria, what happens is your phone volume reduces. And if we take an average number, we had practices that told us, up to 20 hours. And I think that was a fantastic number. When I heard that, I was like, wow. And they like, yeah, now we can proper focus on client care, and
Yes.
this is an amazing achievement. But what happens is your phone volume reduces, and you get proper time back within the team to do your work, something that you want to do, because taking a vaccination over the phone, it's not no pleasure for the team that works in practice.
Correct.
But at the same time, the pet owner, I've been in line where I've been number 15, being on hold for 20 minutes just to book a simple appointment, where maybe I even received a reminder to book it, but then being on hold for 20 minutes waiting to then talk to someone who's probably annoyed because I'm number 200 for her that day. Not a great experience. So why not reduce that stress level and reduce phone volumes? Yeah.
And I love receptionists. Can't live without receptionists in clinic. And I remember being extremely short-staffed one day, and I was covering what we call the front and back reception, and then also muddling through inpatients and nurse clinics and that sort of thing. And I had a delicate situation with a client, that was putting their animal to sleep. And in those moments, you really want to be present. You want to give something of yourself and try and make it as dignified and as calming for the client and the pet as much as possible. And I remember the phone just ringing and ringing and ringing, and the pressure I felt in that moment of thinking, this could be an emergency that's calling, I don't know. This could be a vaccine, I don't know. And but I'm also becoming distracted because I can't focus on the person in front of me. And it really just takes my mind back to what you said, being able to allow those that want to book online, and those routine appointments, especially like vaccines, and then those that do need the personal touch, that do need to talk to you, you've got a bit more time for, whether that's on the phone or the person in front of you, because your phone isn't just back to back with calls coming through. And I think that's really important. I know people are concerned that you'll lose the personal touch. I love talking to people, as you know, so I really understand the value of that. But as we move into times where we are used to technology, and as you discussed last week, Ida, with the generations that are coming up that are very used to technology and expecting to be able to book online, let them. That's great. Let them do that. And for those that really do want to talk to you, they don't have to wait as long. They get a bit more attention and you're present. And I think that's extremely important. And I had another clinic that reported to me that the receptionists were absolutely over the moon because they saw a drop in the phone calls, and they were able to get through a pile of insurance claims, invoices, talking to clients, and they felt they could just breathe a little bit better. They were able to do other things, and as well as care for the people that are arriving in clinic that day. So I think that's really important to mention.
100%. When I hear that as well, the concern of, are we going to lose personal touch? I usually respond with a question. I tell them, imagine you being the pet owner, entering the practice. Who would you rather be greeted by? Someone who holds the phone and gives you this one, please stop, don't talk to me right now because I'm on the phone? Or would you like to be greeted by someone who actually is able to look at you, smile at you, and maybe has this 1 to 2 minutes to talk to you? Me as a pet owner, I'm booking 10 o'clock on my couch, evening, comfortable, first win, because I'm happy. I was able to book in my comfort zone at a time that works well for me. Then I come into practice and I'm talking to a human who has a minute or two to spare to actually look at me and talk to me. I think this is a win-win situation. So again, if someone asks me, do we lose personal touch by implementing a digital solution for online booking? No, I think it's quite the opposite. I think you win. You give comfort to your pet owners, and at the same time you increase the personal touch, because once they arrive in practice, you're really able to focus on them as a human being rather than stopping them, interrupting them. Don't talk to me right now.
Exactly.
I have another task which I'm trying to juggle at the same time.
Yeah, I agree. And thinking about the clients that do call as well, I suppose this leads quite nicely on to new clients. If the new client's experience is that they're on hold or they can't get through, or they do drop into the clinic and somebody's not available, it's not the best first impression. And we know that with new clients, they can book online just as easily as an existing, but we have the new client form now, which is great. So we can capture the information so that clinic staff can register them ahead of time, as opposed to standing at the reception desk, form filling, or being on the phone for 5 minutes going through each and every question. That can be quite in depth. So this is another time-saving tool. And not only does the new client get to book an appointment, fill out the information, but the receptionist save time, and they've got all the information they need before they've even arrived, which I think is brilliant.
100%.
And I think there was one question, and we typically see this during the sort of testing phase, is how do new clients and existing clients look in the practice management software? And this is going to vary, of course, from what we call PIMS to PIMS, but typically the client, the clinic rather, is going to know if there is a new client booking versus an existing, because we match with current records in their system. And for new clients that have never been there before, there's obviously no file to go to, and it will say new contact or new client, and they'll have that form emailed to them as well. So there is a differentiation, and they can visibly see that and manage that internally, which I think is great as well. So another thing, Ida, that I think clinics are coming away from is the request an appointment. This has been historic, quite traditional in clinic, that you would have a form on your website. You would say request an appointment. The client would click on it, complete when they would like, all their information, which is quite time consuming. This would be emailed to the clinic, and I imagine a lovely receptionist would have to go through it, check it, see if it's available, and either confirm or say, nope, sorry, is there an alternative? So it's just back and forth communication, which is time consuming. So now we've, of course, come to online bookings in real time. And we love the term real time because it means exactly that. A client goes online, they book an appointment, and it's going to land in the relevant calendars in the system, exactly as if you were to add an appointment internally. It's going to pop up, it's going to take that time slot immediately. There's no delays, there's no sort of back and forth and having to confirm with the client. And I think it becomes seamless and very convenient for the owner, but equally the reception team. They're saving so much time because it just enters the system immediately.
Correct. So usually what I show when I demo the tool, I show them, the online booking process from pet owner perspective, and then what does it mean? What happens? So you start the journey, you select the appointment type that you're interested in, you select it, and you're going to be offered time slots. You choose a time slots that works well for you. You continue by leaving some personal details, and then you can click on confirm booking. So what happens in that moment that you click on that button, confirm booking, is it enters the practice management system in real time. So we will write an appointment note into the practice management system. This is what happens for the clinic. And what happens from pet owner perspective, you receive a confirmation email, which I love, includes the reschedule and cancellation button.
Exactly.
So I think the reschedule and cancellation button is fantastic. So you see, lady, let's say I booked an appointment for Monday morning, 8 o'clock, and I received the confirmation email, but then maybe Saturday night, something comes up. Sundays, most practices are closed. Me as a pet owner, I have no chance on canceling that appointment. But what I could do is I could use that cancellation button that was sent to me with the confirmation email. I cancel on a Saturday night. The appointment on Monday becomes available in real time. And maybe then someone on a Sunday has the chance to book a last minute appointment. And the slot on Monday, again, will be rebooked by someone else, matched into the practice management system. And for the clinic, that means you saved probably 3 phone calls, and
Exactly.
everything happened digitally, seamlessly, without you having to do anything. So I think real-time online booking, this is the way to move forward. There's no doubt about it. Nobody would even think about booking a flight over the phone anymore.
Or
Back
request
then,
a
we did it.
request a flight.
Yes, or
I would
request
like to
a
fly,
flight.
like to
That's
fly
just
then.
exactly. It's just not an option. And the sooner I think we get on board with offering real-time online booking also for practices, which I understand is more complex, but as we discussed, we're able to cater for those complex situations. I think the sooner you get on board, the easier it will be, and the more you will also see how much your team will benefit of offering online booking.
Absolutely. And I know a common question is how long does it take to onboard? And, what we typically have in the implementation team is a few calls. And the reason we have a few calls is because we know that your setup is important in clinic, and we want to make sure we give it the time that it deserves to go through the setup with attention to detail, and make sure that it's customized highly, to clinic's liking. So usually, we have an introductory call. It's called the kickoff call, where I know who I'm, talking to at clinic level and who's going to be my close companion for a while, and make sure that the setup is correct. And we really get to understand what the clinic's expectations are and what their needs are, what's most important to them right now, and how can Vetstoria help with that. And then we proceed into testing, which is such an important call. And this is where we really get to synchronize with the practice management system. And as you mentioned, Ida, we take them through that pet owner journey, and we show them exactly what the pet owner is going to experience, how they're going to book, and then we make sure the appointment is landing appropriately, and can we confirm, reschedule, cancel. So it's a very important call to make sure everything works appropriately, but also give the insight, because I always feel it's a little bit alien up until this point, and when they really see it working, it's fantastic. And then we do a bit of training. We have a meeting where I explain all the lovely settings and features, and the reason we do this, yes, we have a support team and customer success team on hand to help after onboarding, but we want the clinics to still remain in control. They can log in, they can change and check settings as and when they need to, and so they can bypass the support team if they want to. And so we love to give that information. Now, these meetings, typically I would say take 2 to 3 hours, but we know that clinic life happens. It's busy, so we tend to follow the clinic's lead. So if you wanted to onboard quickly, we can of course help you and accommodate. But if you're typically busier in clinic, it may take a little bit longer, or if you have a bit of a complex setup. So yeah, we can pretty much go as quick as the clinic wants, but we do just have to bear in mind, if you've got multiple branches, if it is a referral centre, it may take a little bit more of a bespoke approach. And we do also have to just bear in mind what we call the lovely API, which is when we synchronise with the practice management system, and this can be a couple of days, up until a week for some. But yeah, typically we can get you onboarded with the meetings in a week to 2 weeks, depending on your practice management system.
That's usually what I state as well. So when practice managers, usually they ask, how much time do we have to invest, because they hear how customizable it is. So they're very afraid of us taking a lot of time, but that's not what happens. Usually 2 to 3 hours, pretty standard, and really depends on the availability. If you're able to give me 3 hours within that 1 week, we're happy to go live within that 1 week. But usually on average, clinics decide it's 1 hour per week, and then we end up with an onboarding duration of 3 weeks. So yeah, really depends on the availability of the practice, but 2 to 3 hours spread over 3 weeks in total. And I think that's nothing compared to the time that they save once the tool goes live.
Yes, and it's important not to skim over the details. We want to be granular. We want to get right into the nitty-gritty of your systems, and make sure that Vetstoria are mirroring it and helping. So it's important that we do that and have those conversations.
Yes, exactly. Okay.
So thank you, Belle, for listening to us waffle on.
1 hour, Vicky, 1 hour. I was looking at you and I was like, oh my gosh.